Welcome back to the Hoosier State. I want to thank Wayne LaPierre for his leadership. The introduction he knows I prefer is pretty short. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order, and it's my honor to welcome the NRA-ILA back to Indiana. Thank you all for coming. It really is good to be back with all the patriots of the NRA, men and women who stand on the ramparts of freedom, defending all the God-given liberties enshrined in the Constitution of the United States every day. With your support, the Trump-Pence administration championed freedom for 4 remarkable years, and every single day we stood without apology for the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. With your support, we achieved the lowest unemployment, the highest household income, the most pro-American trade deals, the most secure border, and we made the most powerful military in the history of the world, stronger than ever before. But maybe most important of all, we appointed conservatives to every court in the land, including to the highest court. We gave America a new beginning for the right to life. And this last June, that conservative majority on the Supreme Court recognized the constitutional right to self-defense exists not just inside the home, but outside the home as well. And I'm incredibly proud to say the majority in the Bruen decision included all 3 of the Supreme Court justices that our administration appointed to the highest court in the land. So thank you for your support for those consequential 4 years. And thank you for the honor of serving as your vice president. It was the greatest honor of my life. You know, my life has changed a lot since the last time I stood at this podium, standing before the NRA. 2 years ago, we moved back here to Indiana, bought 5 acres and a pond. I got a riding mower, John Deere 54-inch deck, 0-turn radius, 25 horsepower. You know, one of the great things about no longer being vice president is you get to drive your own car. One of the bad things is you get to pay for your own gas. And maybe most important at all, that Karen and I they're the proud parents of 3. We actually have become grandparents 3 times over in the last 2 years. Man. We finally figured out the reason we had kids was to have grandkids. Times have changed for us all, though, haven't they? In many ways, today our country is almost unrecognizable to what it was just a few short years ago. Today our borders are under siege. Inflation's at a 40-year high. Gas prices are through the roof. Crime is skyrocketing in our cities. Real wages are falling, and the national debt is piling into a mountain range on our children and those grandchildren. And the confidence and pride that once lifted the American spirit to new heights just a few years ago has been replaced with national fear and uncertainty. All across the country, a crime wave is wreaking havoc in our largest Democrat-run cities. Left-wing district attorneys are refusing to prosecute criminals, and left-wing politicians have slashed police funding and blanketed airwaves with incendiary rhetoric that fuels the chaos, endangers police officers, and threatens American lives. Well, I came here today before the NRA to say enough is enough. It's time we took a stand for America and for freedom. Because the truth is, as we stand here today, American freedom is under attack as never before. Big media, big government, even big business have locked arms to advance a pernicious, radical left agenda, trampling on free enterprise, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. You know, not in a million years could anyone have imagined that an American credit card company would someday collude with liberal politicians to track, monitor, shame, and eventually shut down legal gun store purchases. But that's exactly what's happening as we speak. But I'll promise you, with a new Republican Congress and a new Republican president, we will kick these liberal meddlers out of our gun stores and out of your lives. You know, the elites in Washington have never been more out of touch with the values of everyday Americans, and never more intent on imposing their agenda on each and every one of us. Anyone who dares to disagree with their left-wing dogma is targeted for harassment and ridicule. They want to take away your freedom of speech. They want to take away our religious liberty. And as you all well know, they want to take away the right to keep and bear arms. But let me make you a promise. As long as there is breath in my lungs, I will stand with you to ensure that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We gather today at this NRA-ILA Leadership Forum in a very challenging time in our nation. In the wake of tragic violence that struck here in the heartland in recent days, at a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee, and at a bank branch in Louisville, Kentucky. The Bible says that we mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. And I know I speak with everyone here when I say that our hearts and our prayers are with all the families that suffered loss and injury in these unspeakable attacks. Ignoring the motivations of the trans activists who killed 3 children and 3 adults at that Christian school in Nashville, and ignoring the mental health challenges of the man who killed 5 people and injured 8 others in Louisville, President Biden and the Democrats have returned to the same tired arguments about gun control and gun confiscation. But we don't need gun control. We need crime control. We don't need lectures about the liberties of law-abiding citizens. We need solutions to protect our kids. So I say to Joe Biden and the gun control extremists, give up your pipe dreams of gun confiscation in this free society. Stop endangering our lives with gun bans and stop trampling on the God-given rights of the American people every time tragedy happens. Instead, you could actually join us in doing things that would bring real solutions and enhance safety to America's families. You could take steps to end violent crime in our major cities. You could confront the scourge of mental health in this country that's claiming lives every year. And while you're at it, why don't you secure the southern border of the United States of America and end the tidal wave of illegal immigrants and drugs pouring into our cities? You know, as a grandfather of those 3 little girls, I'm just going to tell you from my heart, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the excuses, the predictable blame shifting, the pointless calls for gun control against law-abiding Americans. I'm tired of the senseless violence and the loss of life that could be prevented if our leaders would support law enforcement, protect our schools, institutionalize the obviously mentally ill, and enact legislation to ensure that anyone thinking about these heinous acts of mass shooting knows that they will face justice and face justice swiftly. Those are real solutions. And it begins with electing leaders who will stand without apology with the men and women of law enforcement and end the defund the police movement once and for all. You know, the police officers in Nashville and Louisville rushed in without regard to their personal safety and even engaged the assailants after they were injured. They deserve the thanks and gratitude and admiration of every American. So we need to support and back the blue. But secondly, with Joe Biden spending trillions of dollars on their liberal agenda, I think the time has come for leaders in our nation's capital to give every community in the country the funds to place armed resource officers in every public and private school in America. You know, in the wake of the Sandy Hook shooting, right after I was elected governor in 2012, we enacted legislation here in the Hoosier State to do just that. The most prosperous nation in the history of the world can afford to protect our kids. It'll just take leadership to do it. So stand with law enforcement, protect our kids. And finally, while the assailants in the most recent attacks were taken out by law enforcement on the scene, too many mass shooters languish in prison for years. Well, men and women, I don't have to tell you, justice delayed is justice denied. It's inconceivable to me that the shooter who killed 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018 is languishing in a Florida prison. I believe the time has come to institute a federal death penalty statute with accelerated appeal to ensure that those who engage in mass shootings face execution in months, not years. And finally, with so much violence taking place at the hands of those with severe mental illness, the answer to mass shootings is not fewer guns, but it's more institutional mental health in this country. You know, in the 1960s, liberals emptied our psych wards only to fill our streets and ultimately our prisons with the mentally ill. Today, more than 20% of our prison population have serious mental illness. And the truth is, these people shouldn't be in prison because they never should have been allowed out on the streets to commit the crimes that they committed. You know, one of my last acts as governor of Indiana before I became your vice president was we broke ground here in the Hoosier State on the first new mental health hospital to be built in 30 years. Men and women, we have got to get back to institutional mental health care in this country. Families with someone who is struggling, a threat to themselves or a threat to others, have to have a place to send that family member other than the county lockup. We've got to rebuild institutional mental health care in America. Now, while the other side talks reflexively about gun control, these are real solutions. Backing the blue, protecting our kids, advancing policies that will ensure that justice is swift, and dealing with the dangerous mentally ill with institutional care. But it's going to take new leadership to get these things done. You know, when the government allows rampant crime, or even worse, when it encourages rampant crime by lax prosecutors in our major cities, government's enabling assault not just on the American people, but on liberty itself. I mean, I don't need to tell you, the Constitution of the United States is the greatest charter for freedom in the history of mankind. It's the foundation of who we are, the most prosperous and free nation the world has ever known. And now more than ever, America needs the voices of the millions of patriots of the NRA to stand up and to stand on the Constitution of the United States. You know, more and more it seems like there are two kinds of people in this country. Those who believe the Constitution says what they want it to say, and those who believe the Constitution says what it means. We're looking out at all of you. I know you know the Constitution says what it means and means what it says, and so do I. And I will always stand on the Constitution of the United States and defend all the God-given liberties enshrined there. So help me God. People aren't always going to understand when you make that stand. I don't have to tell people that defend the Second Amendment. Criticism may come. And so I'm here in closing just to urge you to stand your ground. In these challenging times, we need freedom-loving Americans everywhere. Stand your ground on the foundation of the Constitution of the United States. Stand your ground by continuing to educate this rising generation about the foundation of our freedom. Stand your ground by electing men and women at every level of government who believe in and will support and defend the principles enshrined in our nation's charter. And as you stand your ground in these troubled times for our nation, if you're inclined to bow the head and bend the knee, I encourage you to do that too. You know, this country's in a lot of trouble. We need healing in America. We need to bring our nation together around our highest ideals. So as you go forth from this city and return to your homes, I encourage you to remember those ancient words, that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray and turn, he'll do like he's always done in the long and storied history of this country. He'll hear from heaven, and he'll heal this land, this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you for the honor of serving. Thank you for being here in the Hoosier State, and thank you for your strong and unwavering stand for freedom. God bless you all.